This is the Sales Bible Podcast, episode 369, Global Sales When You Don't Speak the Language, an interview with Wendy Pease.
Welcome to Sales Babble, the podcast that shares selling secrets for non-sellers. And now your host, Pat Helmers.
Hello, Sales Babblers. This is Pat Helmers. Today I would like to have a conversation about the global marketplace out there. If you're only selling in the United States, you're leaving a lot of money on the table. But I can see the hesitancy. I can understand the hesitancy because more often than not, you don't speak the language there, which is why I thought it would be a great idea to have today's guest, Wendy Pease, on the podcast. Wendy has been doing this for a long, long time, and today she gives us some practical advice that we can take action on today to open up those markets and to find customers who are aching to buy our products and services. We have a lot to babble about and laugh about on this podcast, but before we do that, here is a message from our sponsor. Sales Babble is sponsored by Habanero Media, a podcasting agency that produces B2B interview-based podcasts. A podcast is the premier way for a business to boost its brand, authority, influence, and trust. With podcasts, companies grow revenue by meeting influencer and prospects through the interview process. If you've ever thought about starting a podcast to grow your business, go to habaneromedia.net for advice, help, and classes on how to start a B2B podcast. That's habaneromedia.net with an H. I love that sponsor. They're the best, Habanero Media. Anyway, and so, with no further ado, let's get to it.
I'm ready to go.
Well, welcome, Wendy. Are you ready to babble?
I am so ready to babble. Thank you, Patrick.
I appreciate your patience here. This is the second time that we tried this. When was the first time? Maybe about a week ago?
Yeah, it was about a week ago, but who's counting?
Who's counting? So let me start with my first question. The 21st century is a world market, and when businesses decide to sell abroad, and oh, by the way, this is also true in some places within the United States, that they could be selling in markets that don't speak English.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And so many people think that, if they just provide content or just try to speak to people in English, they can still sell, even if the other person's native language isn't English. Big mistake.
That's a big mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah, which brings to mind why I invited you here today because of your background in global marketing. And most recently, you've been selling internationally. And I think you'd agree this is a real challenge.
Yes, it is. And I wrote a book, and it's for sale on Amazon right now. It's called The Language of Global Marketing. And it does get into when you're selling and you don't speak the language, what can you do about that? There's so many different options. So it's nothing to be afraid of. And it's also not good to say, I'm just going to sell in English, but all these little tricks that you can use to sell across languages.
Why are you so big on this topic? How did you get interested in this?
I lived in Mexico, Taiwan, and the Philippines when I was young, and I can remember not speaking Mandarin when we were in Taiwan, and just feeling kind of lost. Even though you can connect with people across smiles and hand gestures and, just being curious is such a wonderful thing, really understanding the language and the culture can help you connect so much more. And so now, I majored in foreign service. I got an MBA. I love the language of business, but when I marry it with all the culture and the language and helping companies grow internationally, I just love it.
This probably sounds like a lot of work for some companies. Is it worth the effort to sell abroad?
Oh, heck yeah. I mean, all the research shows that the companies that export have higher revenues, they grow faster, higher profits, pay higher salaries, they're more stable. And you figure if anything in the economy is going bad in the US, oftentimes they're going better in other countries. And so you just, the companies that export do so much better. Besides, there's free money to help you do so. You can get grants to export, translate, to redo your website and then translate your website to attract international audiences. And there's free supports from the state and federal government since our balance of trade is so skewed off. They want to help U.S. companies export. Less than 1% of U.S. companies export, and 98% of those are small and mid-sized companies. So the opportunity is huge, and that's what I get into in my book is the opportunity that's there and some of the countries that you can think about.
So let's say a company does see the value, and for them, it's a big green field of opportunity. Where are they getting it wrong when they're selling abroad?
Well, number one is they're thinking that English is the global language, and nope.
Isn't it? I thought so.
No,
Can't we make an assumption that the British Empire did a really great job teaching everybody English?
nope. Nope, 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 nope. The companies that translate pull in a lot more business, and all the research supports it. I mean, I can quote so many statistics at you as to why you need to translate. So that's the number one mistake. Um, it's so easy to do, and your ROI is huge. And the second mistake is thinking that you can put the Google Translate plugin on your website and that'll be good enough. Um, there's so many different ways around that you can do it affordably and effectively to connect across languages and cultures.
I know you got a big list. I'd like to walk through your list of what are some of the things that companies can do in order to be successful selling abroad.
Well, the first is to have a strategy. So, good companies have a corporate strategy of what they're trying to accomplish over the next year and then longer term. And then they typically have a marketing strategy as what's the plan to adapt. Your multilingual strategy should support those strategies. Now, when people decide that they're going to go international, oftentimes they're afraid of language and culture. So they decide to target English speaking countries. Now that's fine, except for every other country. I mean, company that's in an English speaking country is going to do that too. So the companies that really step back and say, okay, our strategy is to expand and let's figure out where the right market is rather than picking by English, then they can target the company they're more likely to get a return. Once you develop a process for entering a new market, you can just replicate that once you figure out which other countries are good to launch into. And so I love this story about one of our clients is he contacted us and said, I'm getting emails from China because people are reading my website and they want what we offer. It was a software as a service. And he said, I want to be able to translate those emails and go back and forth. And so after talking to him, I realized that the emails were asking for further clarification on what his services did. And so when we could boil it down to the questions that he was being asked, he could just translate the answers to those and then put a landing page that talked about what the company does, minimal translation, put that up there so people could navigate to it. And then he could take them through the sales cycle without even having to talk to them. That was his business. And then we did tell him that if he did have a client that he needed to talk to, we have telephone interpreting or Zoom interpreting so they could hop on a meeting and get an interpreter there to facilitate the call. And you just pay per minute on that. So if it's a quick 10-minute call and it solves your problem, it's inexpensive to do, yet you can gain a big client that month over month they're going to pay you because it's software as a service.
So this is interesting. we're talking about an enterprise sale, a B2B sale that's being done with email and texting, and there's no in-person or spoken dog and pony show?
Yeah, I mean, you can do it for software as a service. Creative firms are selling internationally. There's all sorts of B2B services. There's also manufacturing companies. I mean, we work with one client that manufactures big machinery that puts cereal into boxes, cereal, dog food, that kind of thing. We work with other manufacturers that, like our air sensors. So things like that can go over. And then you talk about consumer products. We've got companies that are selling consumer products that can go right through, but you better believe that it's important that you're connecting with them in a cultural way and providing the products to with descriptions that make sense in their language, and then they have the opportunity to buy in their currency. So there's no one size fits all. And that's what I get into in my book, The Language of Global Marketing, is the different ways to consider all these things when you're going international. Um, and we're always happy to do a free consult to brainstorm with people on the best ways to do things, because sometimes people don't know. It could be a couple $100 to add some language to your website to really connect with your target audiences.
You said that culture is something that we should be thinking about when we sell into a market.
Yes.
What kind of mistakes could you make when it comes to regarding culture?
Well, we did the tagline for Staples a number of years back, and they talked their tagline at that point was "Make More Happen," and they wanted to take the more out, and you could make work happen or make play happen. What they had a bunch of words that they were putting in there, and one of them was "Make refrigerator art happen." Okay, so it's really cool in English. Refrigerator art is that, your kids' art that you hang up on the refrigerator so everybody can look at it and celebrate it. Well, the French translator came back and said, in France, there's no such thing as refrigerator art. The refrigerator is for keeping food cold. So there's no equivalent. So that kind of cultural advising is what our translators do, that if you're going to put something out there that people are going to raise an eyebrow and turn away from, you'll be forewarned rather than just translating it because, you said it in English.
So that's a good point.
Yeah.
People don't put crap on their refrigerators like magnets and kids' art and postcards and photos. They don't do that kind of thing?
No. No, so doing a translation. Another one that I was having fun playing around with just yesterday, I was in a clubhouse room and somebody was talking about a redneck, their redneck friend. And I was in hysterics. I thought, that word wouldn't translate. So I put it into Google Translate to see what I would get. And in Spanish, I back translated it, what it gave me. And it came out with like white, what was it? White countryman or something like that. In German, it changed it into farmer. So it just didn't capture the meaning of what a redneck is, what we refer to as a redneck in the United States. Yeah. There's another great word. I think it's a Finnish word, kalsutakanit. It means I'm at home, drunk, in my underwear, and I'm not going out. We don't have a word for that in English.
No, we don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Reminds me of the joke that I spent all day in my underwear. And every bar that I went into, I got kicked out.
Yeah. And how many of you listeners out there are salespeople that you're selling these days in your underwear because you're sitting at home on your computer?
Yeah.
Hopefully not drunk. Words that can't be translated. That's a big thing that we work with. And that's why not just anybody can do your translation. So
when I lived in China in 2016, we had this app, I think it was called Wago. and you'd go into the grocery store, and you could like scan a can or a bottle or something, and it would be in Chinese, and it wasn't helpful at all. It would say something like Happy Frog or Morning Sunshine, which was like the name of the company.
Right.
So that's the kind of thing that you're talking about, right?
Yes. Yes, machine. So when I first got into the industry about 17 years ago, um, there wasn't much machine translation. It wasn't doing anything. And the prior owner had done everything through FedEx and people and hard copies. And then, when I came in, we were leveraging the internet a lot more and there was no machine translation. And people would say, well, who needs translation? And about 5 years after that, people started asking me, well, isn't Google Translate going to put you out of business? And
Mm-hmm.
I said, I hope not, but I don't think so. And then in the last 5 years, people have been asking, well, do you do that translation where it's in what they're asking is culturally appropriate? And so machine translation, Google Translate is phenomenal for if you go on vacation, you want to translate something quickly and you can ask it. Um, it's fine if you have translation that is the same all the time and you can leverage, a translation memory to do it. It's fine for when you're getting reviews, like if you go to Airbnb and you look something up, you could Google Translate some of the reviews to get the gist of whether, it's saying, oh, this is terrible or this is fantastic. But you've also got the clues of the 5-star rating versus a 1-star rating. Where it can't work is anything that has to be accurate, anything that's can affect your top line or your bottom line or your liability. You still need to have a human involved. And so that's why it's like nails on the chalkboard to me when I see somebody has a Google Translate plugin in. If you're in sales and you're listening to this and you sell internationally, the first thing you need to do is, have a consult with us or an agency that specializes in high-end translation to figure out what you can put on your website that, you don't even have to do the whole thing and spend a fortune on it. You can just put a buyer's journey and translated language pages to give the information that people really want, and your sales will go up.
Right, right. You would just do the translation yourself, and up at the top of the web page, you would have some flipper that would people could set for the native speaker, right?
Right, right. And it's industry standard now to have a globe up in the top right hand side and then drop it down and make sure you translate the
Oh.
languages, because I also see that as people will put English, French, German, Chinese. Well, if you speak Chinese, you're not going to know what the English spelling for Chinese is. It's just like when you go, that's another problem with the Google Translate plugin.
Yes.
They put it down at the bottom of the page so nobody can find it, and then when you click on it, it has the English, the languages in the name. So I've gone to Chinese websites to look for the Google Translate plugin, and I have no idea which characters are, say English. So I'd never even be able to find it.
All right, so I'm sold that a company should do this. So I guess the next reasonable question is, where are the hot countries? Where should I go? What market should I go into? And I also want to take into account the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic. Who are the top nations that are on the horizon that I should be looking at?
Oh, what are you selling? If you're selling sundresses, I wouldn't go to Greenland. You've got to do your company analysis on that. And so my advice is if you're in the United States and you're thinking about it, come to our website, Rapport Translations, and go to the search bar and search STEP grants, and you can find all the contacts for the states as to who offer STEP grants, and right there they can help you do a country analysis. And so it so depends on what you're selling. In my book, in the beginning of the book, I talk about this. Are you looking at GDP? Are you looking at growth of GDP? Are you looking at pure population? Are you looking at purchasing power parity, which is the ability of people to buy stuff beyond the necessities. So there's a lot of different ways to look at it, and what technologies they want. So, the BRIC companies have been really big. It's Brazil, Russia, India, and China. Projected to be growing big as India, Indonesia, and Nigeria in the next, 20, 50 years. Um, so it really depends. I mean, a lot of people used to go to the UK because it was a launching ground to go into the EU. But now that Great Britain has left the UK, more companies are going into the Netherlands because they've got the language skills and you can use that as a launching ground. But again, if everybody's going into the same place as your competition, you might want to look at an alternative market. So I'm happy to consult and give opinions on to anybody who's thinking about doing this.
My last question is, how many languages should I be working on?
Oh, I thought you meant learning. I always laugh when I'm speaking. I say, how many?
Well,
Huh?
I have studied a number of languages, and it's not trivial to learn a new
Yeah.
language, especially for those later in life.
Yes, I'm going to do a blog about the 10 words you need to know when you're doing business in any language. And, they're all words of gratitude. They're thank you, excuse me, please, and then you've got the hellos and the goodbyes and stuff like that. But if you learn those 10 words and have a good interpreter, you can do so much, or leverage your website and put translation up there. But you don't need to learn another language. There are so many business people that speak one language. They can do the preliminaries with people that are bilingual in English. And then for important things, you make sure to bring in your language experts. And just be careful of your distributors and your internal folks, because we've seen a lot of cases where they've changed the messaging. And in sales how important it is to get the messaging accurate.
So, if people want to reach out to you, people want to contact you, what's the best way to do that?
Oh, I am all over LinkedIn. Just search for Wendy Pease. You can go to wendypease.com, and that's an easy place. It's spelled Wendy, P as in Peter, EASE.com. And up there's a link to our blog and our website that talks all about the language translation interpretation. Or you can go to Amazon and get the book if you want to know more, The Language of Global Marketing by Wendy Mackenzie Pease. That'll come up. Oh, and I do a podcast. It's called the Global Marketing Show.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, yes. Tons of places
Really?
to get information. It's my mission to help people export and do business cross borders. Yes.
I didn't realize we were both podcasters.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Huh.
Yes, that's why I know the power of podcasting, and anybody who wants to start a podcast should definitely reach out and talk to you, Patrick, because you certainly know about it.
You're so kind. But thanks for the shout out.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, you're exactly right.
Yeah, I love your Sales Babble podcasts. I find them very interesting.
Yeah, this is an awesome audience. Wendy, thank you very much for babbling here on Sales Babble.
Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias.
I had to say it. Happy to babble with you anytime.
Goodbye. I personally could really identify with a lot of what Wendy was talking about. I remember this one time when I was in Tres Cantos, which is a suburb of Madrid, Spain. I was teaching a class there, and I show up at the hotel, and the guy starts speaking to me in Spanish, and I go, excuse me, I don't speak Spanish. I'm an American. He goes, oh my goodness, an American. He goes, did you know the United States is the number 2 Spanish-speaking country in the world? And I'm like, no, I didn't know that. I went and looked it up, and it's true. and he taught me a little bit of Spanish, like how to ask for my key and hello, goodbye, and stuff like that. And I was working with a Spanish client at the time, and I was thinking, boy, you just can't make an assumption that everybody speaks English. What do we always say? People buy from those they know, like, and trust. Speaking the local language has a lot to do with it. But I like her notions that there's a lot that you could maybe automate, and there's technology that you can use to kind of smooth it. Have a website in the local language that makes it just a lot more trustworthy than if it was only in English. But it's got to look right. As I said, I've seen some of these Chinese websites that are written in English, and you could tell that they're Chinese through and through. And you look at that and you go, that's kind of sketchy. With a little bit of work, you can make a website look like you're just as local as the guy down the street. So the question is really this: if you feel like you got enough leads and you got more than enough business, in the country that you're at, in the English-speaking country that you're at, then this might not make a lot of sense for you. But if you would like to open it up to an even broader market, there is a ton of customers in South America and in Asia and in China and in Africa. And I believe in the possibility that you could do quite well there. So I hope you found some value in this episode. And if you'd like to connect with Wendy, you can. We've got links to her in the show notes at www.salesbabble.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe so that you never miss another episode. If you have any questions, if you go to salesbabble.com, there's the Babble Me button. You can click on that, and you're more than happy to ask us any questions. If you have any advice for us, if you're looking for some advice, we're more than happy to help. So with that said, that's all I've got for today. Until next week, take care and have a highly successful and a profitable selling day.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Babble podcast. Find us at www.salesbabble.com.
This is a production of Habanero Media.